that you may hear stories like this from time to time, and usually when they're reported on, they are confined to the region in which they happen, so that at a national or an international level, you really don't get the information unless you go to the internet and really dig this stuff out to connect these dots.
Now, dot number one actually did make the news. I know that it was on CNN and Fox News. However, it wasn't there for very long. It was just barely a blip, and it was the story of a young man who has been for some time been given access to the White House press pool, and his name is what's the first name? Gannon?
Jeff Gannon.
Jeff Gannon, thank you very much. Remember those initials, JG.
Jeff Gannon was a reporter for an internet news site called Talon News. Mm-hmm. And back in March it came out that Talon News was really a partisan news source funded by a big Republican party backer down in Texas. Mm-hmm. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, as long as you can tell...
No, there are lots of those out there.
Sure. And as long as you can tell the direction of the spin, because there really is no totally objective news source out there, you can take it, filter it, and decide whether it's credible or not. I think what got the rest of the White House news pool upset was that this Gannon, whose journalistic background was limited to a 2-day seminar, was somehow getting passes to attend White House press briefings on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. So some enterprising journalists started doing some checking and found out that Jeff Gannon was actually one James Guckert. Mm-hmm. James Guckert was previously the owner-operator of websites that solicited for clients as a male prostitute.
That's right. No bones about it.
Right. I mean, that's what it just flat out. I mean, now you go to his website, and he will not deny his past, but he'll say, look, this is what I was, and what I am now is something different, and but that's not where the story ends. I mean, what the upshot of what happened there was that he was denied further access to the White House, and Talon News, the website, has shut down. That's
right. Now, this was Jeff Gannon. The story from 2005.
Right.
He was known as Jeff Guckert as recently as 1998. Mm-hmm. However, in 1987, he was known as James Guckert. In 1998, he was known as Jeff Guckert. Again, all these are the initials JG. In 1987, and folks, he claims to be.
Well, I think it is claimed that he is. He has not come out and claimed to be.
Oh, I thought he had.
No.
Okay, my mistake.
Now, see, this is the connection now. The upshot of this story, and where it really gets interesting. I mean, beyond the obvious question of how did this man, with his background as an online male prostitute, make it past
I couldn't get into that press room, I'll tell you that.
Right. You've got to go through a lot of security checks in order to get access to the White House. And this is a question that was raised on left-leaning websites and blogs like the Daily Cause and Democratic Underground and so forth. And I'll admit, when I saw that they were the ones who were really raising the story and running with it, I kind of dismissed it.
You and I both said that.
Right.
Okay, this is a smear campaign.
Right. Smear campaign, tempest in the teapot. Okay, the guy's got an unsavory past, but people can change. Let's cut the guy a break.
Right.
Okay, well, here's where the story gets interesting. Shortly after he was outed, and maybe I shouldn't use that word, but anyway, after his past was disclosed, people began to speculate that maybe this James Guckert, Jeff Gannon, actually was born with another name, with the initials JG, Johnny Gosch, Gosch. And this is where the story gets weird.
Absolutely. You might want to take a minute and do a little search on Google for Johnny Gosch, Gosch. His mother is Noreen Gosch, Noreen. He is a name that came up when I was living in Nebraska back in
This was in 1982.
Yeah.
During the early morning of September 5th, 1982, 12-year-old Johnny Gosch was kidnapped from a neighborhood in West Des Moines while he was delivering newspapers. It was a very quick abduction, was very silent, and apparently a professional job. Johnny Gosch has been missing for 23 years, going on 23 years. Somebody, and I don't know the chain of events or how people managed to connect this together, started looking at pictures of Johnny Gosch as a youngster and comparing them to the photos that were available of James Guckert and Jeff Gannon. Mm-hmm. The similarities between the 12-year-old Johnny Gosch and the now 35, 36-year-old Jeff Gannon, James Guckert are striking. Now,
Well,
that's not proof in and of itself.
that's true. However, Tom Flacco was told by John DeCamp that DeCamp believes Jeff Gannon and Johnny Gosch are the same.
Right. Now, Tom Flacco is an investigative journalist, has a website, tomflacco.com, that's Flocco, and you can do some checking on the stories that he's written regarding Johnny Gosch and kind of piece together the notes here. John DeCamp is a former state senator from the state of Nebraska. He was, after his term in office, he served 12 years in the state legislature in Nebraska. He was hired by the Republicans or the Nebraska state legislature, rather, to investigate a very bizarre chain of events that surrounded the Franklin Credit Union, which was based out of Omaha, Nebraska.
Right.
The Franklin Credit Union was owned and operated by a gentleman named Larry King. Now,
Not the talk show
not
host.
Larry King.
No, this is an African American gentleman.
Right.
Who totally different.
Right. The Franklin Credit Union and the Franklin Cover-Up, which is the title of a book written by John DeCamp, is a very interesting story, and it's a very disturbing story, and it's really at the heart of what we're talking about. Yeah, this broke in Nebraska in 1989. Lawrence King, who was the head of the Franklin Community Credit Union.
Actually, I think it was fall of 1988.
Okay. It was
November
when the
of
investigation
1988,
began.
yeah.
At the time, Larry King was a rising star in the Republican Party. He sang the national anthem at the nominating convention, the presidential nominating convention in 1988, at which George Bush Sr. was nominated for president.
Right.
He was eventually indicted, first of all, for a lot of money missing in the credit union. But what began to come out during the course of this investigation was that Mr. King was operating a pedophile ring out of his credit union in Nebraska, and not just arranging for young boys and girls to be provided as for sexual services to powerful men. He was abducting underprivileged children in and around the Iowa and Nebraska areas to be used as part of this ring.
And not only providing them to the elite members of this ring, but also selling them at auction. Yeah,
reports from kids who were just in the wrong place at the wrong time and got caught up in this, that children were abducted, taken to Las Vegas, Nevada, and Toronto, Canada, and literally sold at auction. Sold at auction. Now, we're not talking about something that happened in this country 200 years ago, or up until the 1860s. We're not talking about something that's ancient history. We're talking about things that were happening within the last 20 years.
Right.
And John DeCamp found out about this because he was brought in to investigate this situation by the state legislature in Nebraska. I mean, I can just imagine how Nebraska seems like one of the most, and I'm speaking as an outsider, seems like one of the most boring states. The only thing I can think of Nebraska is a pretty good college football team and lots of corn.
And lots of pigs.
But apparently, this story began to break, and the legislature in Nebraska was really disturbed by this and said, okay, DeCamp had a good reputation as a straight shooter and as a Republican, and the fact that King was a Republican, and some of the names that were being named as clients of his were Republicans, he was brought in to debunk this thing as just being ridiculous.
This was during the Bush-Reagan administration, and this scandal went to the very top.
And we were going to put links to all of these articles, and we're talking about links to Washington Times articles and other, reputable news.